The number one item on here was the one we've already talked about. It was just too much, but fortunately. And we've talked about that already. Too much, but fortunately, not enough, oh shit. The number two item on this list is not enough hard choices, right? That's where we say, what might it cost to do the wrong thing? What is the right thing? And we've talked about that pretty well already, so I'm not super worried on that front. The number three thing on this list is just this. A lot of times I see work where the central conflict does not grow or change much, where the problem on page 50, here's this lady who's working at her job that she loves, and the boss is giving her a hard time, and she's afraid she might get fired. And if that's still happening on page 300, it's hard to feel like the middle was well used, right? So it's sometimes, what I notice when this happens to authors, what will usually happen is they're holding the same note too long, so they keep turning up the volume to try to make up for it. So in page 50, the boss is giving this employee a hard time. By page 300, the boss is a psychotic monster because the author had to find some way to keep making this feel bigger, and that was the best they could come up with. There are not enough changes to the status quo in this situation. So there's a problem with the central conflict. The number 4 item on this list, and by the way, this is just 10 common first draft issues. These are just 10 things that I notice a lot of people have trouble with, regardless of their genre. So the number 4 item on this list, right, is we just have too many words accomplishing too little. And that's where it says narrative multitasking is a must, right? And that is, again, we talked about this with our 7 deadly sins a little earlier. That's almost impossible not to do in a first draft. Really, all you need to do in revision is just say, what is it I'm trying to accomplish here? And what is the quickest and most powerful way I can do that? Did anybody see Ace Ventura: Pet Detective when Jim Carrey put it out? Remember how they start with him stealing the little dog from the mean guy's apartment? And we don't even know what he's doing. He's like this crazy UPS guy that keeps like kicking the box down the hall and smashing the glass, very cheerful. And he steals this dog from a mean guy who really doesn't look like he needs to be having a dog. And the moment we realize that he's a good person, he steals the dog, he runs away with the dog, he gets in his car, his terrible beat-up old junker of a car, and he says, "You hungry, fella?" And he pulls out the ashtray, and there's kibble in the ashtray. And the dog starts chowing down. And right then, that's a good guy. He might be a total Martian, but he's a good guy. So the thing I would emphasize for this number 4 issue, the too many words doing too little, it does not take as long as you think to pull out that ashtray full of kibble and let us see in an instant who your person is, right? And very often, one thing that I do with a writer is we'll go through their scenes and I'll ask them to make me a list of everything getting accomplished in that scene. The best ones are getting at least 2 different things done, oftentimes 3. The best scenes are usually the one that is accomplishing more than one purpose. Like it forwards the plot and it reveals character. It develops this character and it builds the scene and it foreshadows this later thing. It's very difficult. You really can't be worried about that when you're first writing. But in review, it's a great idea to look and see, how much am I getting done here? Every time I go to the store, am I just getting one thing at the store, or am I actually consolidating my trips and being really efficient with my time? Yeah. And then the number 5 is just, well, this one we already talked about a little bit, but it's just holding one note too long. Since we talked about that a little bit, I will add in and just say, and ask you where are your irreversible moments? The moment in the story where something happens and the character makes a choice that they cannot go back from. So for example, that story about the character whose boss is giving them a hard time, well, that's all we do from page 50 to page 300. It's going to feel kind of draggy. What if the boss is giving the character a hard time, the character does something either unintentionally or deliberately, it ends up getting the boss fired. Now the character is offered that promotion to take their place. We have a radical role reversal. And if our person takes that promotion, they are going to learn very quickly what a difficult job they have just stepped into, right? That's just one example. And you don't have to do a role reversal thing, but I think it's really good to be clear on where, like, think about those doors at the airport, the one-way doors. When you go out to baggage claim and then they won't let you go back in, where are the one-way doors in your plot? Do you have them on a reasonably regular basis, where a character makes a choice and they go through the door and there's no going back? You can't go back to before the boss got fired. You can't go back to before you knew that your partner was cheating on you. You can't go back to before you asked the little red-headed girl out and she said no, right? We are now in a different place. The number 6 item on this list is pretty easy. It is just too many answers and not enough questions. It is very tempting to answer everything right up front when we're first writing the story, when we're explaining it to ourselves. What we need so much, especially in the beginning, are not answers, but interesting questions, interesting curiosities to get us to turn the page. So sometimes it's good to play a little Jeopardy game with yourself and say, so I've given an answer and said, because her father ran out when she was 6 years old, what is the question then? How do I get the reader to want this answer? How do I provoke their curiosity about what might have happened in her past long before I satisfy that curiosity? And how many pieces could I break that answer into? Yeah. Number 7, I think this goes back to something we talked about earlier. It is just unclear emotions and expectations. It is very hard to really grapple with the changes in a character's life when the reader doesn't understand what their plan A was. So many writers, they feel an urgency to hurry and get to the plan B, the plot, that we're dropping on this person's head. Before we get there, can you tell me what this character wanted to have happen first? Can you tell me what they thought their life was going to be like before you dropped the plot on their head? Were they looking forward to going? If all they wanted to do was just fight traffic, get home, eat their Hungry Man dinner, and watch Netflix, I need you to make that Hungry Man lust a palpable thing, so that when you wreck it and they don't get their Hungry Man dinner, I feel that pain with them. And then you can do whatever you want. Then we're off to the races. But it really helps to know what they wanted to have happen, what they thought was going to happen, what they expect to happen, so that when things go sideways, we can feel that magnitude of shift with them. 8 and 9 are super quick and not hard at all. Number 8 just is when the author skimps on the hard stuff. Y'all, what is the hard stuff? Could be, yeah. It really is different for each person, yes. That whatever it is for you, whatever you find difficult or you're not confident about your ability to write, you probably skipped as much of that as humanly possible, at least the first time around. I can point out fantasy authors who don't know how to write battles because their characters always get knocked unconscious right when the big battle starts. Or they have the whole thing. You can always tell when a comic book artist isn't comfortable drawing feet because the character's feet are never shown. There's always a dust cloud or something that obviates that need, right? So 8 is just the author skimped on the hard stuff, and number 9 is just the author did too much fun stuff. I can tell you what fun stuff looks like for George R.R. Martin. It's violence and sex and feasts. He loves writing feasts. If he doesn't know what needs to happen next in the story, he's going to give you a 12-page description of a meal. And you know this, okay? Jean Owl, like the Clan of the Cave Bear lady, she super loves those painted caves. And you can tell she loves those caves a little too much in the later books. Those cave paintings are too much to resist. So really, whatever was easy and fun, you probably did too much of. Whatever was difficult or you weren't sure how to do, you probably didn't do enough of. And I don't know anybody who is exempt from those things. And it's not a problem to acknowledge that and just allow for that correction in your revision and say, okay, now I had my first draft, I told myself the story, now I need to balance this so it provides the kind of experience I'm trying to deliver. And number 10, if you're ready for this, y'all, the number 10, the last thing on this list is just too many first ideas. You found an idea, you found the first, it's like a man at the store. Just grabbed the first thing and went home with it, right? Didn't even look to see if it was what, just took it because it was easy. It's like, there, I got the thing. It's like, dude, this is dog food. He's like, well, cats eat dogs, right? So really, y'all, I so encourage you, and again, this is not the job of the first draft, but for your revisions, for when you really need to soup something up. It's like the Tamajitsu example. My first idea was, what if she was malware? Okay, well, I just got that from a bunch of other sci-fi movies, right? So that idea needs to go in the garbage. The second idea was a little bit better, like the Trojan horse thing where she's secretly bad, but she doesn't know she's bad, like she's a sleeper agent. And that was okay. That was better, but not good enough. And it wasn't until we drilled down past that we got to the fabulous idea that left Bud really excited to go back to his story with. And again, there's nobody immune to that. I think it's a process. You may like to do it with, it may help to do it with a partner and talk it through like he and I did. It may be something that you just need to write down on paper, like, okay, well, this is my first idea for his traumatic past. And if that was my first idea, it was probably a lot of other people's first idea, so maybe I'll hold off on that. What's my second idea? What's my third idea? And if you